Okay. It was way across the school field when we got it.
Good afternoon. My name's David Hill Turner, and I am the soon-to-be past president of the Nanaimo Historical Society. And I'd like to welcome you to our end of 2022 program with the picnic here at Morden Mine. And thank you for all coming out this afternoon. It's we pulled some strings, and the rain's going to stay off apparently until 5 o'clock, so we're good. We got connections here in the Historical Society. So thank you very much for coming. We have a bit of a program today of a speaker and a bit of a tour of this grand structure behind us, the Morden Mine headframe. And certainly it's been a project that many of us have followed, probably for, in some cases, decades. And it's something a pleasure to many of us in the Historical Society, as I think at least two or three of us here today were founding directors of Friends of Morden Mine. So it's congratulations to the Friends of Morden Mine as well to us what they've accomplished, because certainly it's taken a long time, perseverance, and I think given the state of historical conservation these days, they have to be commended for doing that. So at this point, there is a program today and there is lunch, but like everything, you have to go through the hoops before you get the food. And I will turn it over at this point to Christine to bring us all up to date on what's happening. And at this point, I'd also like to introduce Susan Garcia. And Susan, as of July the 1st, will be the president of the Nanaimo Historical Society. Unfortunately, I have a very intense travel schedule over the next 10 months. I'm going to be away a lot, and Susan has kindly stepped up to stand in my place. So thank you very much, Susan.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to start with a few introductions of out-of-towners to welcome you. We've got Clarice and her Bob Perkins. They're from Port Alberni, but she has a long she's 200 years old. She has a long history in the Nanaimo. She looks remarkably good. So they came today just for this. That's wonderful. I'll be introducing our speaker in a second. I'd like to introduce two board members from the Friends of Morden Mine, Sandra and Mike. Just stick your hand up. I'm also on that board. And who else do we have here? No, I know we have somebody else that's from out of town. You're Louise's sister?
Yeah.
What's your last name?
Valette.
Oh, okay. Well, there they are. And we
We're
have.
from Victoria, but I'm originally from Nanaimo.
Yes. Oh, great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, from Victoria, originally from Nanaimo.
And this is our special guest. I'm very excited about this. This is the Taylor family, Doug and his daughters. And Doug is going to, at lunchtime, you can go and talk to him. He grew up here. Well, not here, but he grew up down the road, and he can tell you some stories about the mine from his own first-hand account. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. And we have now, we have Lynn. Everybody knows Lynn Bowen. She probably can answer questions about mine stuff. And anybody I forgot, I'm sorry. So I'm going to introduce Liam Process, the project, and what it was like, what they did. And he is a principal at Heritage Masonry. Is that correct, Liam?
That's correct.
Correct. So welcome, Liam, please.
Meet all you guys. I guess you would say the project manager of the restoration project that we did here. And the first time I came here, it was the project had already begun in a capacity before me, and I really didn't know anything about the structure at all. And I worked pretty closely with the Friends of Morden Mine and learned a lot about the history and what it means, the industrial history of the region, and what it means to a lot of you guys and your family and whatnot. I'm from Victoria. My company's based out of Victoria. We do a lot of, we specialize in masonry, do a lot of stone, brick, concrete work, sort of all over the place. But the history of this particular location I learned sort of on the job from being here and meeting the community coming down as we were going. So we were brought in after the structural shoring with the containers was installed. That was a project that was before my time here. But if you guys recall or don't realize that there was risk of complete what they would call global collapse of the structure. And so a team was brought in working under the Friends of Morden Mine to install all the shipping containers and the rigging and the cribbing to basically provide disaster mitigation in the event of an earthquake or an unfortunate circumstance. The whole structure wouldn't just collapse. And the problem for everybody involved with it, especially the parks, who owns the site, is that it became a major public health safety issue. One of the lower cross beams, the lowest one, had legitimately just fallen out and smashed on the ground, and that was the point where they said something has to be done, because it's no longer just going to remain for a few more decades. It's time to fix it. So they brought the team of engineers in. They went around with a genie lift and inspected the entire structure and sounded it and took cores and looked at samples of pieces that had fallen off and made a plan on how to fix it. And then I was brought in to be the guy to fix it, which is in essence what we did. And it was about a year and a half. It was the process for us started with concrete mix design to try and find the right new concrete to replace the old concrete with. So original material from when the site was built was analyzed in the lab. They looked at the aggregate and the cement compositions and designed a custom mix specifically for this project. Gravel sourced nearby, cement compositions comparable to the 100-year-old, concrete, and also strength characteristics, so they were similar to what was existing, so that new concrete and old concrete, as they interact, they don't jeopardize each other with your freeze and thaws and your different cycles. New concrete's stronger than old concrete, and they don't interact the same way, so they're very, very similar in strength. It was probably the most complicated part of the process for us, because we had really, really tight constraints on how to make it work. We did have support from Bedrock, Ready Mix, which is the next bridge down the road and up the hill. They were really patient, and they were big, big assets to us, because they probably didn't make a lot of money on the job for the amount of work and the grind that we put them through, but they guaranteed that the material that we were getting from them, the product that we were getting from them, was a kilometer away, and it was perfect every time, and it was a pain, but it worked. So our crews came out, and you can see all of the new concrete. You can clearly see right now, while every one of those repairs was sequenced in an order so that we could, like some of the legs on the head frame all had to be shorn up because we kicked them out entirely, and there was this little tiny bit of pencil inside the reinforcement steel of concrete remaining, and that much had been removed, and there was no more load-bearing capacity in it. So we had shoring posts everywhere. We had the main head frame shaker bins, all were shored up, and all of those legs all got taken out, and a really complicated process of making sure that the structure stayed. And I think we could confidently say now that it really didn't move. We managed to replace all that concrete, and a corner didn't drop, or we didn't have anything sag or any new cracks formed. We managed to do all of those repairs and keep everything as it was supposed to be. They were all sequenced because we needed to add new concrete and then wait for the new concrete strength to hit a certain point, which is approximately 2 weeks, 14 days or so, until we could go to an adjacent area and weaken it by doing concrete removals and chipping things out. So we had a really comprehensive plans with the engineers and the conservators to say we're going to do one repair over here, and then we're going to bounce over here, and then we're going to do that one, that one, that one. All these different parts of the structure were all being worked on at different times, basically top down, with a complete scaffold wrap. But we were bouncing all over the place, and we had our two leaders of the project. One of them was from Ontario, the other one's from Nanaimo. We had two pairs of carpenters, one from Victoria that did all the shoring, and then another crew out of Duncan who did all the form work. And then we had two laborers who all they did was smash out concrete for a year and a half. And they were both young guys from Duncan. And then myself and one of my foremen were responsible for the sort of the management and the concrete mix. So the project was run out of my company out of Victoria, but the majority of the work that went into it was local. We used Sawmill Direct just down the road, just south. They did all of our custom milling for all of our shoring and all of our board, our formwork material, and we tried to keep it as local as possible, albeit I'm not from the region, but pretty much everything else was from Victoria. So if you look at the structure, you can see there was a lot of things that weren't repaired, and we felt that you probably could have doubled the budget and kept fixing. But at the end of the day, the architects, RJC, the architects on record, the engineers on record, deemed that it's no longer a public safety issue. The structure can withstand a couple earthquakes, many generations more of winters and hot summers and cold Decembers and whatnot, and it will remain for who knows how long, but certainly for the foreseeable future. The whole plan was to get rid of the chain link fence and the razor wire so that you could confidently have the public access it, which in essence they can. Yes, there's a split rail fence, but it's not going to stop anybody from going underneath it. So one of the final processes of the project was we made all of our important repairs, and then we went around and took a hammer to every square inch of that entire structure and smacked off every piece of concrete that was going to fall off in the next couple of years. Every spalled bit, every piece of aggregate, every cracked bit of concrete all got knocked off, so that we can say with fairly high certainty that there isn't going to be pieces of the colliery falling off on anybody anytime soon, which gave Parks the confidence to get rid of the fence and turn it back into something that could be accessed by the public and not barricaded and separated, right? And the project isn't quite done. I mean, I think the park is lacking a bit of signage and a bit of telling of the story. We actually removed the signs that were there because they were rotten and falling over. And it's here, and you guys know the story, but it hasn't quite been told yet for the public to come. And a lot of people like to come here and say, oh wow, this is so interesting and it's so cool, and it's here, and it's just almost at that point where it's serving its purpose for the general public, right? Looking forward, we at the very, very end of the project, we did a couple experimental fixes. If you look at the short columns on top of the tipple, all of those bases, all 10 of them have a different concrete mix, and they were put in. Some of them are using traditional NHL cements. Some of them are using over-the-counter bagged and engineered products, and the intention was that those can now be monitored over the next 15 or 20 years to see how they perform in specifically this climate, but it also had never been done in Western Canada to see how different techniques will play into future conservation projects, specifically in concrete. So we used all these different mixes. We took the samples to the lab. The labs did all their testing in the immediate time, and then we can literally just watch over the next few decades and see how they perform, and hope that it will instruct plans on future projects. Because it was a rare opportunity to do this. It's not a typical conservation project, a big industrial concrete. There's two of them left in North America because they just get knocked down. bring in a big excavator and the dynamite crew and smash and boom, and it's down in an afternoon, and it's no longer a thing. Well, a lot of you guys thought it was important enough to keep, and it is. And so there's the history of it, and there's the mining history, but there's also, it's going to instruct future conservation projects. And I think that's what's, like, for me is really important, because I've gone off and I'm working on another similar project where I'm smashing concrete out of an old structure in a different part of BC. And what I would hope is that what I learned and what other people have learned from this one will help instruct the next one and the next one and the next one. Because, you know, we understand stone and we understand brick because it's been around for generations and generations and hundreds of years, thousands of years in Europe. People have built with brick and stone, which is what we do. Concrete is not quite there yet. Like the history and the information and the plans aren't the same for concrete as other materials. And I think the intent was that this one will also educate that moving forward. And I think that's a sort of important for you guys to consider, because the reason you're all together is to push the conservation thing forward, always pushing it forward on all these projects. And there's something to be learned from this one now that it's done. It's not actually, it hasn't finished serving its purpose. There's more information to come from it, which will be the performance of everything that we've done. I don't think anyone admitted it till after the project was over. But a lot of people said, I don't know, I don't think any of us really knew what we were doing when we started this thing. And a lot of different people all came, and we all came together and figured it out. But a lot of people said, there's no playbook for this. There's no binder you can pull out and say, how do you fix this thing? And no one told us that when we started, because we felt that way. But now that it was over, a lot of people said, we figured it out. But man, there was a few times where we were just like, oh, this project could go that way or could go that way. Luckily, it went the right way, and we did get it done, you know. And there's more that could have been done here, but we did everything that we had to, so it's going to stay, right? There's still some rebar exposed, and there's still some old cracked bits, but none of them are too serious. You know, all the structural problems have been fixed, and I don't know how long it's going to be here, but I've got a little 1.5-year-old kid over there, and I hope that she comes here with her kid and checks it out. She was born in the middle of this project, right? And so the point being is that there's the other side of it. She wants to come up and experience this when she's got kids, and that's kind of,
Awesome.
I think that's my spiel.
Just gonna add.
Yeah.
So Liam didn't mention this because he's modest, but this project did win the Heritage BC Outstanding Conservation Award for 2022. So, and all along, without Friends of Morden Mine from the very get-go, it never would have happened anyhow. So if you have questions for Sandra and Mike about the history or anything related to the actual getting the money and that kind of stuff, they can help you with that. And of course, you can ask Liam anything you want. He's a fount of knowledge, and I hope you enjoy it. You can go eat. No, you can go eat and ask him questions. He doesn't have to stand.
Well, whatever. I don't mind asking. I don't mind. I mean, I'll answer questions here, or a side chat, or take a wander around. If
Yeah,
you say
whatever
how you
you
did
want.
that, I'm pretty flexible.
Okay, good.
I have a lot of questions. I'll ask one. How many deficiencies did you see in the original construction versus modern concrete mixing and modern mixes?
The greatest cause of failure was in steel reinforcement.
Mm-hmm.
They had way too much of it too close to the outside surface, so it spalled off, and then it got exposed, and then it started deteriorating, and then it caused all those problems. If you look at it's not rebar because it predated rebar, but call it rebar, all the steel in there. A lot of those beams, it sagged, and it was right down, touched the bottom surface of a beam, and it didn't have the encapsulation, and so that's where your failures started.
Did they sag during the formwork?
It would have been improperly secured in pouring. they'd have just dumped concrete on it and just had these long runs, and they all just sagged. And then a lot of those, we called them nodes on this job, which is an intersection where a beam meets a column anywhere where there's a directional change. And engineers put a lot of energy into designing those directional changes because your reinforcing steel that comes up a column needs to properly grab a beam so that the beam doesn't fail. And the reinforcement design in those nodes was not sufficient. They just sort of had pieces stuck in and they weren't tied appropriately and transferring load from horizontal to vertical and whatnot. Don't think it was in concrete necessarily, but concrete has changed a lot in 100 years. Aggregate size was really big,
Yeah.
which is another problem.
Like ping pong balls, some of it.
Yep, a lot of it was large pieces, and I think they had a lot of crap thrown in there too. You know, hunks of steel just chucked in the form. You know, I don't know what to do with this one. Chuck it in the form, and it's not terrible, but it's not great.
Yeah.
Can you describe the nature of the rebar or structural steel that was used? Was it square in section or what?
All of the large steel was twisted square. So you get a square stock, and as it comes out of I guess it had been like an extruder, they spun it. So it had a corkscrew shape, but it was all square stock about 1 inch. And then everything else was just round. So that's where your technology has shifted. With the spun square, they were onto something because it has bite, which round doesn't. Round doesn't. Can't bond to concrete. Doesn't bond to a smooth piece of round stock, and that's what everything else was. The little stirrups, which are your horizontals to keep your cage in place, and everything but the long vertical runs. So that's just a shift in technology, a modernization, because rebar, I don't know when rebar was invented, but decades after this was built.
My understanding is that this was one of the first reinforced concrete structures. Really, that technology was just in its developmental stages when they put it up.
As far as I understand, that's about right. I don't like the history of it is not my skill set. I'm more the practical side of things and the doing and the fixing. I think there's other people that I would ask to fill that one in. There's the mining history and the industrial history of what it means to Nanaimo, but this is also a rare structure, right? And I think that's why it's still here. Like there's those, I would assume that over the last, when did it shut down? 30s?
Very final. No, it had one little. It actually shut in 21, and then one little spurt in 1930.
And then they realized it really wasn't worth their time and shut it down. So it sat for 80 years, and everything else for all the other mining structures around here were demolished and buried and whatnot. There's a few little bits kicking around, but nothing like this. And then all across North America, there's only one other one kept of this.
Only one tipple.
One structure that we have, like of this design, of this style, and it's Ohio or Pennsylvania.
And you're talking concrete.
Concrete.
Because
Well, they used to build them out of wood.
there's still one in Acme, in the Drumheller Valley, that is a tipple made out of wood.
Made out of wood, but there's only one other concrete one, and that's far east
Right.
in the United
But
States.
now, Hosmer
Yeah.
was a concrete structure built about the same time. And I can't remember if there's a tipple there, but there's certainly a lot of other side, power buildings and that kind of thing, because they had to bring the coal down from the top of the mountain. And
Doesn't Hosmer have a big smokestack?
It
Maybe
has.
not.
I know it's got coking ovens
Yeah.
and stuff and that sort of thing. So there were some of these. It was a series of kind of concrete or reinforced concrete structures going on in the mining.
One of the resounding conversations that we had as the guys who were, like you're sitting in our lunch spot.
Yep.
We used to have fencing in a container, and we used to sit right here and have our lunch and talk every day, and our coffee breaks and whatnot. And one of the things that we had kept coming up was how how difficult it would have been to have built this in the 1912 or 1913 compared to what we got to do in 2020 and 2021 to fix it, and the technologies that we had, system scaff that you can just click up and move all around, and a concrete pumping, mechanized pulleys, all those things that we had. And think about the people 100 odd years ago having to build this out here with different technology.
We had the opportunity to compare this one to, say, the reserve mine buildings, which are built around the same time, concrete.
I haven't.
Down the road.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I mean, like I'm new to getting deep into that world. I couldn't speak to it with any certainty at all.
I think the colliery dam was built, I think, just before this.
Yep.
And I understand that was when the very first cement mixer was brought into Nanaimo. And this, the way you describe the concrete and the reinforcing steel is identical to the colliery dam, which was repaired a few years ago.
And it was probably as they did it at that time, right?
Yeah.
I would imagine. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know if anyone has the answer to the question, but I mean, they probably mixed it on site here. I don't think there was anywhere else that was coming from. The gravel was dredged out of the river wherever they could, just up there, just around the corner.
I wonder.
I would imagine that there was massive differences in concrete between when they poured that little bit and when they poured that little bit. Right, I'm sure it changed a lot because they just got whatever material they had, a bunch of rock and a bunch of sand and a bunch of lime. Mix it in and see what happens.
I think there would have been a rail line coming into here then too, right? I know with the colliery dam they put in the rail line to facilitate the construction of the dam, and I'm not sure in the history of it, but I think the rail line came in through here
My
somewhere.
understanding is that the coal rail line went from the mine there all the way out to the coast.
Yeah.
And this was built here because it took advantage of that rail line.
Yeah.
Is that right, Gord?
You just think it's just the rail line followed the construction of this.
No, I think the rail line was here. And that was built because of the rail line.
Well, the rail line went all the way out to Boat Harbor.
Yeah.
So that's where the RDN trail, this is part RDN, part Parks. So the rail line went and followed a trail all the way out to Boat Harbor. So that's where the RDN wants to make a trail again. Like we've talked about it years ago before COVID. And they want to make the trail go and make a new bridge over the river so that people can walk from, say, here to the Wheat Chief or to Hemer Park. And then the rail line would have come down Morden Road. Like this was the rail line from South Wellington, all the mines in South Wellington. So they load the coal and they would, I believe the rail line was here first.
It goes
And then,
under the E&N.
yeah, and then it would come out here and you can see if you go on the trail down here to the river, you can see still parts of rail line that are still there. And you can, so they want to kind of make that trail go again. And I would like to see rail cars underneath here as a visual. I would love to see this, redone some more and made like a museum, right? Kind of like Britannia Mine Museum of Vancouver Island. But yeah, the rail cars did come through here. I believe the rail was first.
Now, I also think that there's some political activity going on, because normally this would have been built of wood, but is it to do with the big strike? That anyway, maybe Lynn knows more than what I can remember, but there's some special reason, I think political, as to why this was made of concrete, as opposed to being a timber frame structure in 1913.
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't know, Lynn, do you know why
Well,
they
my
made
understanding is that the science of reinforced concrete is very new
it? Yeah,
because there's a hotel in Gastown, the Flatiron Hotel, that was built in 1908, and that was a big deal because it was the first building of reinforced concrete. So it must be really new technology.
And this would be about the time that Bamerton
and they had
things were opening too.
the strike in South Wellington with all the coal miners. So they made this one to try and get some more coal. They couldn't because there was a strike going on. So a lot of, you can imagine, a lot of the men that worked here were called bad names and stuff, but they were just trying to feed their families, right? So they kind of built another mine because they couldn't work those other mines. So it was kind of an add-on, but it never really went, it didn't go past, what year was it now? Where's Christine? What year did this mine go to work till? It's 36.
1921.
Oh, 21 to...
No, 13 to 21, and then a brief period in 1930. The thing that's really important, well, it's interesting about Morden Mine, it only had 3 years where it actually had income. Even though it ran those 8 years, it only received cash. The rest of the time was spent in development work, so their expenses way exceeded their incoming, and that was part of why they went bankrupt in 21. And it's interesting also to know that those workers never got paid. Sheriff Trafford came here and locked the place up in 21. They got eventually paid in 1958, where most of them were dead. So there's these interesting quirky things. It's not, structurally, it's not representative of your typical tipple here, but it's got all these interesting labor stories and other things related to it.
I'll add a layer to the labor story. We actually shoveled the coal out of the tipple.
You
Because
did?
it was still there.
Yeah.
They just shut her down.
Yeah.
And one of the things was, so like finish the job. We've done all our fixes, so we put our dirtiest clothes in, and there, we have a video of this pyramid of coal dust dropped out of each of those that had just sat there, and it was all full of weeds, and there was big leaf maples growing in there. But as part of just clean it all out and assess the whole thing and pull all the organic matter off of it. So we were the last people to move coal here.
And then your carpenter's pencil that you found.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there was an old carpenter's pencils, and there was there was snuff cans, and there was like boot dubbing cans that were just like littered all over the place that were on the structure. That as you get up there, they just fell out of a guy's pocket and stuck in a little nook and cranny and whatnot. You know, so. Yeah.
Well, I think we're ready to have our food and keep on the conversation. There's dishes set up. Thank you very much,
Oh, it's a
Liam,
pleasure.
everybody.
Thanks for having me.
There's dishes set up on the table.
One other that was the first one.
Well, our family carried us or water. Water is probably best. Our family was